This is Andreas Welch with Intelligence Briefing. Next up, I'm going to talk to Cam Ogden from Precisely. So join me for this one. Come on. Cam, it's so great to meet you. I know you've been talking a lot about Agentic-Ready Data. What's it all about?
Yeah, so Agentic-Ready Data, if you were to think about data trust as a concept, within most organizations, that's a concept that's been around for quite a long time. And, the stakes around data trust, as an example, is it typically came from the analytic lens, right? So if you had a dashboard or perhaps a report that breaks down, people would care a lot about data trust. But if you think about agents within the enterprise, you're no longer now making decisions for agents. Agents are the ones that are making the decisions on your behalf. So the risk and the confidence level in your data that you need to be able to have needs to be much, much higher, right? So when you think about Agentic-Ready Data, it really is in making sure that your data is fit for purpose to run agentic workflows, and that you're going to have high confidence in agentic decisions. And so I think the question is, why is that critical right now? I think if you were to walk into any room and say, well, do you care about building agents internally? Are you experimenting? Are you building prototypes? Almost everybody would raise their hand and say, yeah, absolutely, that's part of our picture. But then if you were to ask them, well, what's your confidence level in the data that those agents are running on? Most of them would drop their hand and they'd say, yeah, not so much. So that's a gap that really is critical to think through.
Okay. That sounds great. And I'm sure many of you watching this are facing the same situation as well, whether you know it or you don't, or you like to admit it or you don't. But I know you also done some research with Drexel University in Philadelphia, researching what the state of AI and AI adoption is and readiness. And if I'm not mistaken, 90% of the survey participants said, we are AI ready, but then actually only 40% said, we think we're readily prepared for all of this. Where do you see all of that disconnect coming from, and what can leaders do about it?
Yeah. I mean, disconnect is the right word. I think that there are probably two disconnects the way that I see it. Number one, there's just a disconnect at the altitude level within organizations. So I think, if you were to go and if you were to ask, such as the LeBeau survey did, they ask a number of data leaders, how ready do you feel for AI? And oftentimes they'll frame that around, well, we have a roadmap that's in place. We've invested in cloud infrastructure. We're enabling the organization when we've declared that people need to be able to use AI as part of their daily jobs. And so I think the answer to most of those questions is, yes, we're ready. But then if you were to dig down into the details and get your hands into the data and go and talk to more of the operational or tactical leads on the team, you start asking questions around, well, how complete is this data set? Do you really understand it? Do you trust it? Does it have the right context? Is it well integrated? And the answers to a lot of those questions oftentimes are no. And so you have this gap around kind of what I will call around the altitude between strategy and execution. I think that's one disconnect. The other disconnect is just around how we measure outcomes that the AI initiatives drive. So, if you were to ask a lot of leaders, such as the LeBeau survey did, how much is AI readiness as part of your business capability roadmap? Over 70% of them say, yeah, we're absolutely investing in AI. It's got to be one of the top 2 to 3 things that we do as an organization this year. And then you ask, well, how are you measuring the outcomes related to those initiatives? And what we found is that most leaders are saying only about 30% have actual true measurements and metrics that they're using to determine if those initiatives are successful or not. So there's a big gap there as well. And anecdotally, I'll just say is that, many of the constituents that we reached out to in the LeBeau survey are more of the strategic leaders in the organization. And so they're often setting a vision and setting a plan that's future forward looking.
Something that's still pretty significant, right? And especially to your point, when AI agents come into the enterprise, I'm curious, I know you've also been talking quite a bit about agentic AI data integrity gap. What is that all about, and how can leaders close it?
Yeah. So Agentic-Ready Data is essentially data being available for the agents to be able to do their job with high confidence. And the way on how we think about that is, there are a number of, call it sub-problems that make up the gap. And we've identified them as really 6 core problems. And we've used that to develop our Agentic-Ready framework against. The first problem is that the data oftentimes gets trapped. So it's inconsistent. And it's really difficult to be able to bring that data together in different data silos within the organization. Number 2 is it doesn't have the right context. And so you got to make sure that your data has great context for agents to understand the full picture of what the data means, making sure that you're enriching the data either within your own organizational context or with third-party sources that are highly trusted. The third problem is that oftentimes the data is just out of date. It's not fresh. And agents operate in a world where they're doing real-time checks against the data. And so if you're doing a lot of batch processes or the data is out of date, you're going to have a hard time in having the agents making good real-time updated decisions. The fourth area is that the data is just incomplete. Oftentimes you have data sets, let's say a customer table as an example that's sitting in your CRM environment. That same data set might be replicated to a lakehouse. And then that same data set might also be used for an analytical process in your analytic data warehouse. That data set might be incomplete or invalid across those different lenses. And so the agent has to spend time rationalizing and figuring out what data is trustworthy. The fifth area is that oftentimes data is just not governed appropriately, right? It's you don't get full line of sight into where the data comes from, where it goes, how it relates to different compliance events. And then how that all totals up is that you end up spending a lot of cost on untangling these problems. And that's the sixth area, is that the cost structure tends to be pretty burdensome. So the way on how we see leaders getting started with this is, they're identifying a use case. They are using the 6 dimensions around the Agentic-Ready Data framework to make sure that their data is unified, it's got context, it's fresh, it's complete, it's governed, and that they have the right cost structure. They're using that to prove out that use case, and then they're starting to replicate that use case in other areas of the business, and that's how they scale out. So that tends to be a pretty good framework that works. The last thing I'll say is, this is what really excites me, what we're building with the Data Integrity Suite, because a lot of these agents that we have in the suite are helping our users and customers fill those gaps at scale. So they're helping them govern and integrate and cleanse the data in a more automated fashion, and that's helping them get to a win as quickly as possible.
That's awesome, especially coming back to the point of starting small, experimenting, building the first use cases, and then finding scale. I think that's something we see in other AI and data projects too, and I think it's so important because you need to show the momentum, you need to show the wins to your organization so you can keep going. But Cam, before we wrap up, where can our viewers learn more about Precisely and about what's new?
I think the best place to go is to precisely.com. There's more than enough there to get you started to learn about what we're building in our software, data, and consulting.
Fantastic. Cam, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much.